Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. The Philadelphia Eagles behind me today interviewed more candidates for the Eagles open offensive coordinator position after the Eagles parted ways with Kevin Patullo last week. The Eagles most recently completed an interview with Brian Daboll, according to reports, in the NovaCare complex, again, right behind me here. And this Eagles offensive coordinator job, in my opinion, probably the best open job in the NFL right now on the coaching staff of any team because of everything that's there, right? You have play calling, you have opportunities to be part of a team working with an elite quarterback in Jalen Hurts, being able to be a perennial Super Bowl contender. The Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator job is objectively one of the best offensive coordinator jobs out there, one of the best coaching jobs out there in this round of vacancies, even though there are a number of head coaching positions that are available in this particular round. Now, we're going to take a moment here while we're down here at the NovaCare complex and just run through some of the Eagles offensive coordinator candidates who might be viable candidates, who are the people that I'm most interested in, and who are some of the people who have been interviewed and my thoughts on them. And we're going to start actually with somebody who hasn't been interviewed yet, but with somebody who definitely the Eagles have shown interest in going into this particular cycle, and that would be LSU offensive coordinator Charlie Weis Jr. Now, Charlie Weis Jr. does have an NFL pedigree. His dad, Charlie Weis, was part of the New England Patriots staff. Charlie Weis Jr., again, LSU offensive coordinator, previously from Ole Miss. So he definitely has a little bit of a coaching background. The Eagles actually showed interest in him before the season ended, which is significant, and it tells you a little bit about what the Eagles have been thinking when it comes to this. This seemed to be a foregone conclusion that Nick Sirianni was going to make a change at the offensive coordinator position because the Eagles had been expressing reportedly for weeks interest in Charlie Weis Jr. So he did help develop Jackson Dart, who is obviously somebody who the New York Giants has staked a lot of their future on. He is a past offensive assistant for the Atlanta Falcons, notably in 2017. That Atlanta Falcons team was the team that lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round of the playoffs when the Eagles ultimately went on to win their first Super Bowl. This is an interesting choice for the Philadelphia Eagles. I obviously no confirmations yet. There is no confirmation about an interview for this particular team. But again, the Philadelphia Eagles definitely seem to have shown interest in Weis, and we will certainly see how that develops as well. Weis does have the ability to innovate on offense. The question is coming from the college level to the NFL. So just something to be aware of. Of the confirmed interviews, the Eagles did open with Zach Robinson. He is the Falcons offensive coordinator. His offenses with the Atlanta Falcons are actually relatively good for teams coming out of the NFC South. The Falcons offense in his first year was actually top 10 by most metrics in his first year there. So again, definitely something positive in that regard. One problem is that he does seem to be a Kevin Patullo kind of offensive coordinator, play caller. He doesn't seem to have any kind of innovation. He'll call the same half a dozen plays. And again, as we saw with Kevin Patullo and as we saw in years prior with Brian Johnson, the Philadelphia Eagles really need somebody who's going to be able to provide a little bit of innovation, who's going to be able to make changes when things start to stagnate, because things will start to stagnate for offenses. Defenses always catch up to offenses. Somebody else who's been on the interview list is Mike Kafka. And if that name sounds familiar to you, he did play for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2011. Now, he was overshadowed by Michael Vick as well as by injury, but he does have some organizational familiarity. He also is familiar with Saquon as well because he was the interim head coach and offensive coordinator for the New York Giants after the Giants parted ways with Brian Daboll. So again, there's organizational familiarity with Mike Kafka, and obviously we will see how that pans out. I do think this is more of an informational interview trying to grab details, trying to see how the Eagles can get better, as opposed to maybe a serious candidate. Now, the Eagles did bring him in for an interview, so there's something to be said in that regard. But there are definitely better candidates out there. Mike Kafka could be somebody that the Eagles could bring in if none of those pan out. But I do think that at least at this moment that there are better candidates out there for the Philadelphia Eagles to consider. Now, one other name that the Philadelphia Eagles did bring in over the weekend for an interview is Jim Bob Cooter in Indianapolis. And I want to say right off the bat, unequivocally, do not want. This is somebody who would provide a degree of continuity for the Philadelphia Eagles. He is somebody who was on Nick Sirianni's staff in 2021 when Nick came over here. Now, to be fair to Jim Bob Cooter, he was the Indianapolis Colts offensive coordinator and did a great job with Daniel Jones this year. But we definitely need a new face, new ideas, and this would not provide that. This would be somebody who, again, we saw with Nick Sirianni, thinking kind of like Nick Sirianni. I want somebody who is able to think differently from Nick Sirianni, and that's not Jim Bob Cooter. So all respect to him with the job that he did with Daniel Jones, but I think the Eagles really should be considering other folks. Similarly, Josh Grizzard of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was considered. Josh Grizzard did do 2 years with the Buccaneers. 2025, he was the offensive coordinator. 2024, he was the passing game coordinator. He did do 7 years with the Miami Dolphins, so that's obviously something of interest. But there are lots of similarities between him and Kevin Patullo that really just strike me as definitely not something that we should be considering right now. Again, a lot of these interviews could just be informational, trying to learn more from other people. I think there's too much in similarity with Josh Grizzard and Kevin Patullo in terms of approach, in terms of play calling, in terms of the ability to innovate on offense, which is absolutely necessary for a Philadelphia Eagles team that wants to take the next step. And so that brings us to probably the two prime targets, the two candidates that probably most Eagles fans would be really looking for, and that would be first Brian Daboll, who is, again, a top candidate. Rumors were that he was in the building behind me here not all that long ago today on Tuesday. And again, Brian Daboll, really good offensive mind, and he really has a lot of solid connections with guys like Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. Having a familiarity with the Philadelphia Eagles offense. Remember, he was the head coach of the New York Giants, so he had to game plan for the Philadelphia Eagles twice a year, every year, including the year that the Eagles went to the playoffs and faced them in the NFC Championship game in 2022. So the Philadelphia Eagles definitely are a team that Brian Daboll is familiar with. And so I'm sure that somebody like him would be able to take the Philadelphia Eagles, be able to bring a lot of his offensive ideas, and be able to take the Eagles offense to that next level. One problem with Brian Daboll, though, could be his personality, and that's something that's been speculated about. Brian Daboll apparently has a rather explosive personality, and Brian Daboll also has this penchant for having a scheme, having a system, and expecting players to adapt to it rather than being able to meet them halfway, so to speak. It is really important for the Philadelphia Eagles to have all of that balanced out. Culture is a really, really important thing. That's going to be one of the areas where Nick Sirianni really has a heavy hand as the head coach, is talking about the culture of this team. So I do think that that's going to be something that we're going to want to pay attention to. What's his dynamic like with a Philadelphia Eagles offense that is, in many respects, elite? But if Brian Daboll has his own ideas, how is that going to pan out? So definitely something to be mindful of as the Philadelphia Eagles bring him in for an interview. Again, the rumors, he was in the building behind me not all that long ago on Tuesday.
Hey there, everyone. Future Joe editing this podcast with an update. I had a whole thing prepped about Mike McDaniel and how he would be another solid candidate for the Philadelphia Eagles and why he's one of the top two. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like the Eagles are going to get Mike McDaniel in this round of interviews because barring anything cataclysmic occurring out in Los Angeles, It looks like, according to all of the NFL insiders, that Mike McDaniel will likely be accepting the offensive coordinator job out there in LA, working with Justin Herbert and working with Jim Harbaugh. So the Philadelphia Eagles will probably fall out of the running, which means that, in my opinion, the best candidate for the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be Brian Daboll.
So those are the candidates that we know about. There are definitely other folks that are rumored, other people that could be out there, but let me know what you think in the comments below. What are your thoughts about each of these potential offensive coordinator candidates? Who do you think is going to be the next Eagles offensive coordinator? Is there anybody on this list that I missed? Any thoughts about the ones that I did mention? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage, and if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles!